Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is Ace and I've got more Guild Wars 2 content here for you. This time I'm going to be showing you guys all the weapon skills of the Thief. And if you're looking for a specific weapon for this specific class, look in the description box below for the time codes for every single weapon that the Thief has access to. Well, before anything else, I have to point one thing out, which is that the weapon skills work a little bit differently than any other class in the game, which is unique to say the least. To start off with a main hand equipped, and this only counts for one-handed weapons, of course. As you can see, I have 3 skills available, which is to be expected from every single main hand, and no offhand, so the other 2 skills right here are not available. Now, look at the 3rd skill, which is called Twisted Fangs. Now, the moment I equip any kind of offhand, may it be a dagger or a pistol, you can see that the 3rd skill also changes, which is not really something you would expect. Normally it's only that the last 2 skills, 4 and 5, become available to you depending on what kind of offhand. But with the Thief it's depending on what kind of weapon you use in your offhand together with your main hand, that will generate a specific and a unique 3rd skill. But before anything else, we'll just start off with the dagger in the main hand. So let's get going. Pretty straightforward auto attack. Does apply weakness on the 3rd hit, so to be expected some very nice hits now, some decent damage as well. Heartseeker is an ability that does more damage the lower your enemy is in health, and it looks kinda epic. I love the animation where I look like I'm doing something really quickly, even though it's just some kind of blur, but nonetheless I can imagine or justify it for myself that I go really fast. So that is pretty, at least it also looks pretty awesome in my eyes. And some fairly decent damage when your enemy is at very low health. Of course, the dagger only special 3rd skill, which is Twisted Fangs, which is a small AoE. And as you can see, it also applies bleeding damage. And you can spam it as long as you want, as long as you have initiative, because thieves work with initiative. And not as much as with cooldowns. As long as you have initiative, you can spam an ability. So initiative is indeed a very important attribute to keep an eye on if you are playing a Thief. So let's just move to Dagger, at least double dagger, dual wielding dagger if you like. So I'm just going to wait until we get out of combat so we can equip the 2nd dagger, which is done now. And as you can see, the 3rd skill does change and is now Death Blossom, which is my favorite dagger ability, and I will show you guys why. Because it jumps over the enemy, confusing the living hell out of them. So imagine the purposes of this specific ability, Death Blossom, in PvP, when you're fighting mages or rangers that have to keep you in a direct line of sight, and you can just jump behind them and do massive amounts of damage, as well as some decent bleeding damage that stacks. So very nice. Dancing Daggers is pretty much a throw ability, which is your range. You can throw as much as you like, as long as you have initiative. Does cripple as well, so it's nice to kite people around with. And of course, Cloak and Dagger, which is a stab which causes vulnerability, but also allows you to stealth. As you can see right there. You have to watch out though that you don't keep attacking, because the moment you attack again, you basically lose your stealth. And since auto attack goes really quick with daggers, you have to really be on your toes with that. So be careful. Does also cause vulnerability, so nice ability nonetheless. And especially if you can get out of the enemy's position with stealth or out of his area, you might save your behind with that as well. Switching to a different offhand, we are still in combat, so we have to quickly defeat this golem here, which is just a training dummy. And this whole island is filled with training abilities. And as you can see, thieves are really quickly in combat. They move really fast. They are slightly squishy because they only use medium armor, but then again, that is to be expected. So we can move now to a pistol in your offhand, and you can directly see your 3rd skill changes, and of course your 4th and 5th skill changes as well. Shadow Shot is a pretty nice leap or charge ability, but then in a thief-like way. You shoot an enemy and you directly teleport yourself to the enemy that you shoot, as well as blinding them. So for PvP purposes, awesome. Also for strong PvE mobs, very powerful as well. So shoot, teleport, and then stab him in his face. pretty straightforward. Headshot isn't a powerful ability. I would expect headshots to do a lot of damage because they are headshots, but it's a spammable ability that allows an enemy to be dazed, or a PvP player. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and it does require quite a decent amount of initiative, so it's quite awesome to interrupt people or lock them out of a certain ability or a certain cast time for a few seconds, or for a few seconds, because you have to have enough initiative to chain it. Black powder, it's just a small circle that you create around you, as you can see right here. It also creates a shot to your enemy, and it basically blinds nearby people. As you can see, they are blinded, while you cover yourself in a nice animation. Nothing too out of the ordinary. So it's mainly used to blind people, I suppose. And it also blinds nearby enemies if they get caught in the smoke itself. But they have to walk into it or stand into it, obviously. Now we have the dagger main hand covered, but you can also wear a sword in your main hand, and only in your main hand. And directly you can already tell that the skills completely change. So we are going to unequip the pistol in your offhand and start off with the auto attack of the main hand sword. Pretty straightforward. Third hit does cause cripple. Of course, then you have Infiltrator Strike, which is a shadow-like ability, but you have to do it on an enemy that isn't dead. And the best part of this ability is that you leave a place behind. As you can see, there's a circle where I use this ability, which allows me to, no matter where I am, I can teleport back to that circle. It does disappear when it's used, but I can go in, go back. Go in, go back. So it's a very annoying ability and very hard to counter. And if you find yourself against a mob that will do your head in, you can basically just walk around, throw some stuff, use a pistol, for example, in your offhand while shooting him, and then use this ability to melee him in his face if you are into that. So, a very awesome ability as well. Decent range considering. And of course, the third ability is real decent, just a stabby attack. Just a straightforward stab, nothing too out of the ordinary. But then we equip a offhand dagger, and then suddenly the third skill changes, and we get flanking strike, which also looks quite awesome. You directly go behind an enemy, so it's basically the equivalent of Death Blossom, but then you move to the sides and stab him in his face. You don't cause any bleeding damage, but you do attack twice with it, so you do twice damage right there. As you can see, the second strike does more damage because you are also behind the enemy. Dancing daggers, pretty straightforward. You just throw a dagger, as to be expected. And of course, cloak and dagger, which is something we already covered, which allows you to stealth. So only the third skill really matters when it comes down to this. And then the pistol, we have to of course do his head in first. Oh. Yeah, if you are not used to quick gameplay like this, or very, how do you call that? Very fast-paced, spammy, all over the place type of combat that a thief represents in this game, you might confuse yourself as well, or disorientate yourself as well. So you have to get used to it. And I'm pretty much used to the warrior type classes, so this is completely out of my comfort zone. But still looks very amazing, though. Don't get me wrong. Equipping a pistol, of course, in my offhand. As you can already tell, my third skill completely changes. And it's called Pistol Whip, which is not a ranged attack. But as you can already tell, stunning them, then slash them repeatedly with your sword. So it's a nice stun and damage combo. There you go. And you can pretty much stun it as long as you have initiative available. So there's a small time period when somebody can get away, but if they don't, you can pretty much stun lock them as long as you have your initiative. But you have to also understand that the stun is very short. But then again, Infiltrator Strike, Pistol Whip, and you get them again. So very nice. You can combo quite successfully with every single skill a thief has. So you can already imagine the skill cap of this specific class. Moving on to the headshot, and of course the black powder, we've already seen them. Headshot is pretty straightforward. And of course black powder blinds people. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing really changes there. So I'm just gonna do his face in real quick. Because you can't change weapons out of combat. You have to... well, you can change weapons out of combat, and the only way to change weapons in combat is to have weapon swap enabled. And I don't really have that enabled right now because it confuses, at least messes up the third skill sometimes. I'm not entirely sure if that's a bug, yes or no, but I have to look into that. But it doesn't matter too much, because right now we are going to look for the short bow. Because I believe we have had every single ability that you can pretty much find in combination with the main hand, or of course the offhand besides the pistol. So we are going to now cover the ranged attacks. And as you can already tell, repeater is the third skill of a single pistol. The auto attack is pretty straightforward, decent damage, nothing too out of the ordinary, but also causes bleeding damage, which stacks reliable. Body shot makes your foes vulnerable, causing vulnerability, as you can already tell right there. And you can spam that quite decently, building up the stacks, as you can already tell, above 10. You can stack them as long as you want, as long as you have enough initiative. So definitely something worth looking into. As well as, of course, repeater. You can already expect it to do something like this. Straightforward volley, decent damage, decent single target ability. But it's not going to be something you're going to be using quite a bit, because you will always have, in my experience, have an offhand that will change that third skill. So we're just going to finish this off. As you can see, the damage is not as... at least the combat is not really that intensive if you're just going to use a pistol. And I'm not a really big fan of long range combat with weapons regardless. But we can change that a little bit by using, for example, a dagger in the offhand. As you can directly see, third skill changes, calling shadow strike to the ground. And that allows you to stab your foe, then shadow step away and shoot them. So you get this, and directly get that. It's your defensive ability, which is quite high in damage as well. Because not only do you stab him or slash him, you also shoot him in the face. And you gain some decent distance, considering you also have a ranged weapon. So very dangerous and very safe as well. So definitely nice to use that when you are in a situation when you want to create some distance. But it does take a lot of initiative, so you don't want to spam it. Because if you spam it, you don't really get anything. Because you actually have to, tag the target with the melee attack of that ability. Dancing dagger, we already seen that, which is pretty straightforward. Throwing dagger, and of course cloak and dagger as well. So we're just gonna finish this off and switch to dual pistol. Do another one. Why not? Oh no! Did I just hit another one? Don't want to stay in combat, otherwise I can't switch to my dual pistol. And the third skill is now called unload. You can really expect it to do something like this. So decent single target damage, because you can use it as long as you have initiative, but it does take 5 points of initiative, so very, very expensive ability to use. And of course headshot and black powder are still the same. But pistols are not the only things you can use. The other ranged weapon is two-handed and is called a short bow, and this is a little bit more interesting based on the ranged attacks and purely range. Starting off with trick shot, and it's already directly a bouncing off type of weapon, as you can see. Doesn't apply any kind of debuffs, but it does bounce. Your second ability is called cluster bomb, and it has a large explosion, a small explosion, and it causes bleeding damage as well, which is a decent AoE. You basically shoot that grenade, and you can already see that you cause some bleeding damage. There you go. Detonate in mid-air for multiple explosions. I almost forgot that. So we get this, then that. And we get a very... well, a very wide AoE, to say the least. A very... not a very accurate one. But it's definitely nice to see that you can use these things, these utilities, after you use the skill. It's very nice that you can decide what to use then. Disabling shots, pretty straightforward. Not a lot of damage, but does cripple your enemy. And it does push you back, so very nice to use to get some distance, and you can spam it once again. Nothing too difficult really, as long as you have initiative, of course. Choking gas, you can already see what it does. Doesn't do initial damage, but does cause the healing debuff, the poison damage, and a small radius. As you can see, both weakness and poison. Even though I don't believe that the weakness is from my side, but the poison is. Infiltrator arrow. Oh, that's a heal from the engineer. Infiltrator arrow causes blindness, and as you can see, it doesn't do any damage, but it does cause, you know, nearby enemies to be blinded, while also teleporting to them. Which is weird because you only have a you only have a range attack, so it's really weird you can actually blind enemies if you use it on them to get them close to them. But you can also use it as a teleport ability, which you already saw, of course. So, not sure if it's going to be used quite a bit to actually blind enemies, but it's definitely worth using as a teleport around ability to gain even more distance or getting into a better position. And that's the short bow for you. We only have underwater combat left with the harpoon gun and the spear, so that's what we are going to do next. Teleporting ourselves to the underwater trials. And pretty straightforward, the spear is the melee attack underwater, where the harpoon gun is of course the ranged attack underwater. And I believe we are going to start off with the harpoon gun. And only the abilities change into your harpoon gun if you are actually underwater. There's no underwater limit because you have a underwater breathing device. Starting off of course with the piercing shot. Pretty straightforward, causing some bleeding damage, nothing too out of the ordinary. You do have a very long range on it. The harpoon gun has an insane range always. As you can see, harpoon volley basically, it's called deluge. Nothing too special. Escape, shoot an harpoon, and we're shooting the area, creating some distance between you and said enemy. And also causes poison damage as well as a healing debuff. Disabling shot, I suppose decent damage considering, and also crippling. And once again, you can just spam all your abilities as long as you have initiative. I have to point that out because this is what makes a thief also completely different from every single other class. Because any other class I've covered so far, and I've covered every single class, so you can look that up in the playlist, has a cooldown. A thief doesn't have that. As long as you have initiative points, you can use what the hell you want, which is very nice. Ink shot, shoot the ink that blinds a foe. As you can already see, some nice initial damage, but it's all about that blind. And once again, you shadow step to it, if you like. As you can see, you're constantly going to be all over the place. And you can use it whenever you want, or when it runs out. So that's basically allows you to teleport as well as do some decent damage and blind people. And that's the harpoon gun for you. Now we're going to get out of combat right here real quick if we can. And get of course the spear, which is the melee attack. I do think it's more wise to actually do his head in. So let's just do that real quick. Does take a little while because you don't really have a lot of burst damage underwater as a thief, which is unfortunate compared to, let's say, other classes that do have that. So now we have a spear equipped, which is the melee equivalent. Starting off with the auto attack, which is straightforward stabbing your foe if you get close enough. And the third hit does cause poison as well as weakness. So very nice and very powerful as well. The second ability is called Flanking Strike underwater. Looks a little bit like this. Pretty much similar to the Flanking Strike above water, but then underwater, clearly. 9-tailed strike blocks your foe and counterattacks with a series of strikes. Gain initiative if you are not attacked. So you can defend yourself, you gain initiative if you're not being attacked, but if I'm not mistaken, you can also use it as a ranged attack. Let's see. No, the thief is the first class I actually cover, or that I come across, that can't use their ranged attack on their counterattack, because most classes that have a counterattack can use it again to use it as a ranged attack. In this case, it's not happening. But you do get initiative quite nicely. but it also costs initiative, so be careful with that. Tow line, well, you can already expect what that's going to be doing. You throw your spear and you pull yourself to said enemy, so you can then follow up with either flanking strike or stab, and live to see another day. It also, as you can already tell, cripples enemies, so they can't really get away from you if you're trying to chase them. And of course, the last skill of the thief is Shadow Assault. You strike your foe repeatedly with a shadowy assault, and you also evade attacks duringly. So it's similar to the Mesmer sword ability, I believe the second ability, I can't recall the name. But as you can see, you do evade attacks while doing some very intense damage, I find. While evading attacks, which is kind of nice, and you can just spam it. So theoretically, as long as you have initiative, you can basically be pretty hard to hit, to say the least. And that is pretty much it for the thief. Make sure to stay subscribed for more content and for more gaming content in general, of course. I will be covering more Guild Wars 2 content in future beta weekends, as well as when it goes live, clearly, because I really enjoy this game. If you want to see more content, check the playlist. I have all the starting zones covered, as well as every other class and all their weapon skills that are corresponding to the set class. And I will catch you guys next time, and take care.